Hello, I'm Chris Turin with OneDigital, and today I'm going over and reviewing the Paycheck Protection Loan Program through the CARES Act that was just recently passed into legislation. This is meant to be a simplified executive summary to help you learn everything you need to know to determine if you should move forward with the Paycheck Protection Program. And I'd like to convey that information in just a few minutes. What it's not is a detailed analysis of the Paycheck Protection Program. This is meant to, again, be an executive summary where you can learn about this program in a few minutes, have a really good, solid understanding of the program and the context to determine if you need to dive into the details more. However, this is absolutely not to be considered legal advice or tax and accounting advice. Again, it's just meant to be a brief summary. So let's get started. So why would the government give away $350 billion? This is an unprecedented lifeline for businesses. And the primary objective is to both curtail furloughs and layoffs, as well as get employees back to work as soon as possible. Some of the other goals for this program are to subsidize employer-sponsored health insurance, which is a qualified expense under the program, and ensure that businesses emerge from the crisis intact and ready to go so that we can jumpstart the economy when we get through this health crisis. So let's talk about some of the highlights of the PPP. So most crisis-impacted employers with fewer than 500 employees will benefit. That's our estimation. Some hospitality and dining groups with 500 or fewer employees per location may also qualify. These businesses will receive 2.5 times the average monthly pre-crisis payroll up to a maximum of $10 million. It's not an insignificant amount of money. There's no personal guarantee required. Financials are not required. There's no recourse. And the loan is ultimately designed to be forgiven, essentially converting this loan to a grant. So what are our recommended next steps? Number one, read the Paycheck Protection Program application information materials. Familiarize yourself with those materials. Contact your current banking relationships, whoever you have deposits with or current loan and credit relationships with, because the banks are going to be inundated. It'll be important to find a bank where you already have a relationship. Otherwise, it may be difficult to find a bank who will be taking new customers and accepting loans for the PPP, or loan applications, I should say. Submit your application. That should be your number one goal. I would not delay, because I believe the $350 billion will be depleted very quickly. There's going to be strong demand for this program. Concurrently analyze the program and particularly the forgiveness rules as they apply to your business to ensure you maximize the return on investment and ensure as close, if not, as we expect most businesses will, enjoy 100% loan forgiveness. Do these two things concurrently. I would not analyze it first and then submit the application. You may find yourself at the back of the line with the funds depleted already. So what are the requirements to achieve 100% loan forgiveness? Let's just go over 4 basic requirements of this program. There is some risk of me oversimplifying this, but I think it's important to give you context so you can determine if you want to do a deeper dive. But if you do these 4 things, you will essentially qualify for 100% loan forgiveness after you receive the loan proceeds. Number 1, spend 100% of the loan proceeds on the 4 qualifying buckets of operating expenses. Number 1, payroll expenses and payroll-related expenses like health insurance premiums and some taxes. Rent or mortgage for your business and utilities. The money must be spent in these 4 buckets, and all of the money must be spent. Any monies not spent in those areas will not be forgiven, and those loan proceeds will not be subject to forgiveness. It's also important to understand that 75% of those expenses in the 8 weeks following the loan origination, 75% of those expenses need to be payroll or payroll-related expenses. Number 2, rehire furloughed or laid off employees no later than June 30th, 2020 in order to attain pre-crisis level of employment. Let me be really clear about that. They have to be hired before June 30th, rehired before June 30th in an effort to attain pre-crisis level employment. If you do attain pre-crisis level employment by rehiring these employees, then you again have passed the second test, and we can move on to the third test: restore any pay reductions by June 30th, 2020. Any pay reductions greater than 25% need to be restored by June 30th, 2020 in order to qualify for 100% loan forgiveness. Any pay reductions greater than 25% not restored will be counted as a termination and will adversely impact the loan forgiveness provision. Number 4, avoid additional layoffs or furloughs between April 26th, that's 30 days after the legislation was passed, and June 30th, 2020. Those layoffs between those dates are not eligible for restoration. However, any layoffs or furloughs in that middle bullet point there between February 15th, 2020 and March 26, 2020 may be restored for full credit and 100% loan forgiveness. If you follow those 4 basic requirements, you will be eligible for 100% loan forgiveness of those loan proceeds based on 2.5 times your average pre-crisis monthly payroll. Now, so what else should you know? Number 1, there's a lot of information on our website at onedigital.com/coronavirus. Every detail that you need to know, not just about the Patient Protection Act, but all of the other legislation because of the coronavirus. So there's a wealth of information and all the details that you need, as well as documents and forms. Now, you can also stick around for the next few slides, and I'm going to go over in more detail underwriting information and forgiveness details. So I will be spending a little more time and doing a deeper dive after this initial executive overview. So here we go. If you have learned enough and are sufficiently motivated to go to our website or download the application materials and start that conversation with your bankers, then great. Appreciate your spending the time. For those of you who'd like to learn a little more detail about the underwriting and forgiveness, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So, applying and underwriting, what to expect. Number 1, this is a super streamlined underwriting process. I've honestly never seen anything like it. I guess it makes sense because it's really essentially a loan meant to be converted to a grant is how I see it. You're going to need to provide basic business identification information, a list of all owners of the business applicant with greater than 20% ownership, a list of any business under common ownership or management with the business applicant, details on any emergency disaster loans received by the business between January 1 and April 3rd, 2020, information about individual applicants' citizenship and criminal history must be provided, and the required certifications which must be certified in good faith by the business by each owner of 20% or greater ownership. The attestation is what we call that, and that just means essentially, I'll just kind of frame it up as I see it. You need to be able to affirm that your business has been or will be adversely impacted significantly by the coronavirus. And lastly, all applicants must submit payroll documentation so they can do the math to determine how much you'll receive and how much will ultimately be forgiven. Okay, let's talk about forgiveness provisions. So the loan forgiveness calculation is really a straight line calculation. You must attain full employment in the forgiveness period compared to the comparison period. Okay, well, let's talk about what is the forgiveness period. The forgiveness period is the 8 weeks directly following the loan origination. So when the loan closes, funds have been provided the 8 weeks post-loan funding is the forgiveness period. That's the numerator of this ratio. The denominator of the ratio is a comparison period. You get to choose from two different periods, January 1st, 2020 through February 29th, 2020, or February 15th, 2019 through June 30th, 2019. You pick the one that's more favorable to you. This ratio determines the percentage forgiveness. So it's a simple ratio. Convert that to a percentage, and that's how much of the loan will be forgiven. Okay, it's important to understand what the reductions and penalties are. The maximum forgiveness amounts are going to be reduced by or reduced proportionately for any reductions in average full-time equivalent employees between the pre-crisis levels and the 8-week forgiveness period, just like we reviewed in the last slide. Also, via straight reduction for payroll reductions greater than 25% compared to the prior completed quarter of employment. Now, this only applies to workers earning less than $100,000 annually. For any advances taken on an SBA economic disaster loan, all of those will reduce the amounts to be forgiven. Now, there's relief from these penalties, if you will, or reductions in forgiveness. And here's how you enjoy the relief, because this might sound a little different than what I said earlier. And this is why. There's relief from these forgiveness penalties for businesses that restore payroll to pre-crisis levels by, again, June 30th, 2020. So the reductions compared to February 15th, 2020 in the number of full-time equivalents employees made between February 15th, 2020 and April 26th, 2020, and or as applicable. Salary reductions compared to the February 15th, 2020 made between February 15th and April 26th, 2020 for one or more employees. There does not appear to be any long-term payroll commitments beyond June 30, 2020. So I think that the Act was silent on that intentionally because we just don't know what's going to happen. We're all hopeful that we'll be through this crisis and business will be booming again, or at least recovering. So I don't think the government's intention was, however, to lock employers into a long-term employment agreements with their employees. The goal is to get through this temporal crisis. All right, let's talk about some more forgiveness calculations. The key measure is the average number of employees on payroll in the 8 weeks immediately after the loan is granted. Again, the baseline for comparison is the number of employees compared to either one of these periods as we reviewed earlier. The forgivable percentage is the average number of employees on payroll in the 8 weeks post-loan divided by the comparison period. Employees who receive a salary reduction of 25% or more are essentially considered to be terminated and reduce the forgiveness of percentage, but restoring those employees' salaries by June 30th increases the forgiveness percentage. And employees terminated between February 15th, 2020 and April 26th, 2020 need only to be rehired by June 30th to earn full credit for forgiveness. So again, seems pretty reasonable to achieve these forgiveness metrics. So thank you so much for your participation. I hope you found this information helpful, and please, if you need more information, go visit onedigital.com/coronavirus. Thank you.